Welcome to Caffeinated Mornings, a show built around the idea of more conversation and less presentation. We dive deeper into discussions that go beyond the surface of the work. A big thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible. Today's episode is brought to you by the award-winning, strategically driven, independent, full-service agency TDA Boulder. And we can't forget Buck Ross Productions and Coop Studios for helping us capture and share this show with you. A special thanks to The Coffee Ride for keeping us caffeinated, and to Realtor Michelle Sander and the Zeal Group at RE/MAX, CMCI Studio, Snappy Little Numbers for our theme music, and Pro Photo Rental for their continued support. In this episode, we join everyone's favorite designer and host, Jay Farrakane, for an insightful conversation with audio UX and sound brand designer Connor Moore. In this chat, we talk all things brand, UX, as well as the importance of sounds in our lives, a disdain for jingles, getting started, going places, and what's next for designers and brands. So, get comfortable, get caffeinated, and get ready to be inspired and informed by our newest friend, Connor Moore. Let's go.
I have a tendency just to jump in. I don't know if anyone's noticed that already. But Connor Moore is the founder of Seymour Studio, a leading audio and branding agency based right here in Colorado. Over 15 years of experience in the industry, Connor has collaborated with a diverse range of clients, from ambitious startups to Fortune 100 companies, helping them define their brand tone and elevate their sonic imprint. His work encompasses everything from strategic brand analysis to custom musical scores, sound design experiences for both physical and digital platforms. And then Connor's expertise really lies in creating audio user experiences that are intuitive and direct and distinct. And so ensuring not only that their brands and their products that they make not only stand out, but also resonate really deeply with the audiences. So in fact, you might have even heard his work already. So we're going to give a little bit of a play here. Let's see.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's time to play offense.
So you guys might have recognized at least a few of those brands, and it's always funny to make someone gut it out through their own reel, right? Like when you're sitting there, you're like, "Oh, what am I doing here?"
It sounds good in here, though.
It does. It sounds
The
really
audio
good.
setup is good.
And the Buck Ross guys were a little worried that you being a sound professional.
Well done.
Yeah.
Good job,
and
guys.
big kudos to the CMCI Studio and Tom for facilities, because we went through. They've gone through hell to kind of get the room back up and running. So we really appreciate it. So. But man, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
This
no,
is
it's a
great.
pleasure. This is really cool. Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man.
I've enjoyed getting to catch up with you. We do a little bit of lead up in the way of we kind of make these shows happen. I think, don't be fooled. I know this probably seems so pro already, but there is a little bit of lead up to it. And I wanted to kind of go into a little bit of your title. I think audio branding, most people can totally get their heads around that. And as in the school here, we do a lot of UX, but audio UX might be a little bit harder for some people to understand, because I think so many people think about UX as the visual process. Give us a little insight into what audio UX means to you and why it's so important in brands today.
Yeah, totally. So audio UX in its simplest form is just putting sound to interaction within a product experience, right? So any types of notifications, alerts, you get from any type of product experience, whether it be an app experience, something in your home, your machine, your dryer, your washer, in-car experiences. There's a ton of development happening in the automotive space. So that's, putting emotion, putting personality, but also adding functionality, right? That's the biggest part to me is making something more usable for people, more understandable, more accessible for people, is the core kind of foundation of it. But you also have a huge opportunity to, like I was saying, inject, personality, inject brand, differentiate.
I
you know,
think
from
there's
different-
something too, and we were touching on music as well, and the memory component
Yeah.
of music. And I always joke that we've already invented time travel.
Yeah,
And it's
totally.
music, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, because it can take you back. And that to me is like, as a brand builder myself, the part that, I start to get the audio UX, because it also
Yeah. helps
helps create brand memory. Because like once I played that your reel, I was like, I know
Yeah.
all of these things. I don't even have to be looking at
Yeah.
them, you know? So designing, it's easy. I don't know, as a visual person, I can always say that designing it's easy for me to go make a flat substrate and start to architect a visual within that. When you're designing for sound, how do you kind of like start to navigate even the space that you're going to develop in, and then the presentation method of it?
Yeah, so I mean, with UX in particular, what I do is I focus a lot on like, the basic interactions you're going to get: notifications, success-based notifications, negative, notifications, alerts. You kind of start with the basis of, music theory, psychoacoustics, and not super deep, because this needs to be understandable to people that aren't musicians, right? So, that is kind of a foundational starting point where you can say, a positive alert or notification is going to be ascending, right, in a major key format, right, versus something negative might be descending and be more dissonant, for example, right? So like that gives you a framework at least to start for the arrangement of these things. But as far as like palettes are concerned, that's where you get into brand, right? That's where you get into what is the brand trying to be perceived? How are they trying to be perceived in the world? What are their design drivers is something we tap into a lot for UX, but also from a brand perspective, what are those kind of core principles or attributes that they use for their visual language, right? And like, what do those mean sonically? And how can we kind of develop palettes around those that are going to give them that support for the brand?
And the interesting part of that, you like look at a color or something like that, right? And this is what I often get into the discussion around design. The difference between art and design is design should always have a reason, and I'm not always a big believer in that anymore, but that was kind of a construct to get into objectivity versus subjectivity. So when someone doesn't like red, that's a very palatable, explainable kind of thing. How do you defend when someone's like, I don't like the dissonance of this tone? Like how do you how do you manage like?
Totally.
Yeah, I mean there is objectivity in it, subjectivity.
Oh yeah, sound is super subjective. So like the way I do my process, and this is kind of what differentiates an audio branding process versus like licensing music for a campaign, right?
Right.
That's, for a campaign, you're supporting that particular campaign that might run for weeks or months. With branding, you're really putting this strategic rigor in place that says, hey, here are the core objectives of the project, right? Here's how we're going to approach it, right? A scale of alerts, right? Or if it's, from calm to urgent, right? And how are we expressing those? And that alone kind of pulls you out of subjectivity, because it's like, this framework, right, is like really rooted in science, you know what I mean? So you can't really argue too much about it. I mean, if it's tiny tweaks like, it's too dissonant, it's like, okay, cool, we can pull back on that.
Have you ever had a client use that word with you? Do they get
some,
audio wordy with you?
Some do. Huh. Some have more experience than others, but most of the time, people are coming at it it's pretty new. Right. But there's always a give and take. There's a collaborative process there, but like with my process, I really try to set it up to where it's like, hey, these types of frameworks for UX that are very explicit about how we're expressing these moments that are rooted in, psychoacoustics and theory. But for brand, like I said, we're tapping into, just like in visual design, these core attributes or design drivers that are being expressed visually that we want to support, right? And getting agreement early on that stuff is super helpful, because before I present anything, I always have like a reminder slide. It's like, hey guys, this is what we're critiquing on, right? Like
you
we
give
have
them
we have to look through this lens, not our personal lens, because if we do that, we're just not gonna we're not gonna make progress, right? So,
and I do think that's where it comes back to true design is you're building a system, and that's what
Yeah.
also, if I think about UX and building libraries and systems,
Yeah.
design is very much organized in that way, because also too, like, if you think about the way that brands operate today, it's never a fixed object in time, right?
Right.
So at some point, they're going to come back to you, and we have this new feature. So what's the new sound
Yep.
for that, right? In my world, it's what's this format of this page look like, or something, right?
Yeah.
And so having those systems in place, I think moves it much more to the articulation is very purposeful,
Yeah.
right? It's not trying to say we're removing any of the imagination or invention out of it. I
Right.
often joke with design students here that most of their job will be extension versus invention, because brands need consistency.
Totally.
So adapting, one of the things that was really interesting in thinking about the breadth of your work, you're working on products, you're working in cars, you're working in physical environments. Of all those things, how are you considering optimizing the sound design in those spaces? Do you change, I think I even joked with you, I worked on a manufacturing product one point, and we had to wear these yellow goggles while we worked on it.
Yeah, you mentioned
and
that,
so
yeah.
do you build a construct of hey, I got a fake dashboard in front of me, or is there physicality to the way that you experiment?
Absolutely. I mean, most of the time clients will send prototypes to me, and then I can pipe sound into
Okay.
those prototypes, or I'll go on site. If it's large scale product, right? Cars
Yeah.
or like I was saying, washing machines or ovens, right? Stuff like that.
You've done that.
Yeah.
Washing machines and ovens.
Yeah, but they don't send the
Yeah,
large
it's
scale.
hey, the
Yeah.
FedEx guy's here.
Yeah, right. But I'll go on site, and work with engineers to get things set up to where I can actually optimize specifically to those products.
Does it change your way of thinking when you're okay, this is a enclosed environment versus
Oh yeah,
open air?
yeah,
I mean, it's contextual, right?
totally.
What are some of the tricks that you're kind of using to think about that, even systematically?
Yeah, I mean, with those types of experiences, you have to think about frequency. High pitches, low pitches, brighter tones. In terms of textural, brighter or more muted, right?
Yep.
You have to.
Oh, because it'll kind of pierce.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the first thing I do, especially with product-driven work, I'll ask for a speaker spec, from a client, just so where I can look at the frequency, spectrum on what can the speaker do,
Right.
and then be okay, where is this product living? Is it in your home? Is it, right now? I think I mentioned to you, I'm working with this ag tech company. I think
Tractors and
in
stuff,
the
right?
John Deere space, right?
Yeah.
A competitor. Very unique use case. I did a big competitive audit, and there's been no design in this space for sound. So it's a really cool opportunity, but very unique because it has high, very high sound readings in cab because the engines are so loud. And the speakers, that we're working with for this particular project is a tablet. So that really drives design. People who aren't experienced in the space will just be yeah, let's do it. I'll put sound together and we'll show you, with headphones on or good speakers. But at the end of the day, you got to have that information, because that really goes, okay, that cuts out this whole section of where maybe we'd like to go, for creative and
Right.
design, because quite frankly, this environment and your speaker is capable of this. So it kind of immediately narrows, where you want to go.
Right.
Right.
Well, and especially for that particular instance, you think about how long they're sitting in the
yeah.
environment.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
into consideration.
Well, that's a huge one. I mean, part of this process too is I received a ton of their operator feedback, and their operator feedback's oh, the sound is so annoying. And these people are in the cab for 12, 15 hours a day. Right. So the driving force for me is how can we make this not only better, but just reduce fatigue,
Right.
and doing user testing around that too, to be hey, is this hitting the marks? Is this gonna do that? And we'll learn a lot. Once it's implemented, we're gonna do another round of testimonials and feedback from operators. So
Well,
yeah.
and you touch on an interesting thing, that because I think we as designers, no matter what we're working on, we have some ability to a degree to affect someone's quality of life, right?
Totally,
And
yeah.
and you brought this up, the idea of making the power of sound in everyday products kind of enrich people's lives or make their lives better. And that's kind of what you're aiming at, right?
Yep.
I can look at a piece, a package and it might make someone smile, or there's a funny little piece of copy or something on it. And I think that's what I'm pointing out. Like when you say I'm making people's lives better, it's that kind of consideration. It isn't like we move them up a tax bracket or anything like that. Because I do think those can get mixed, right? Sometimes I'm like, we're here to, we can get really high and mighty about the power of design, and it does have the ability to move things. But also in the day to day, I think is where it's really doing a lot of hard work. And I love the idea when you started talking about that duration of how long those guys are in the cabs and taking all that into consideration for them. Is that a fairly, all design comes with empathy. I think that's a big part of what you do as well, right? Like thinking about that in every circumstance from products. Give me an example of like maybe a more like handheld experience or something like that where you're kind of like, oh, this might be a better way. I know that there has to be some with the Uber work. Yeah.
I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, that was an interesting one because it's driver focused, right? So it's for the driver.
Yeah.
And that type of environment, it's tough to optimize for too because they might pipe it through their car, right? Or pipe it through their phone. Very, very different sound.
Is there different considerations whether you know that or not, or are you kind of aiming for the middle?
You kind of don't know. You're kind of aiming for the middle, unfortunately, right? So, but we did a ton of testing around driving around San Francisco in like the loudest parts and the quietest parts of the city to be like, are these still functioning, right? So to your point, like finding that middle ground was huge, right? And ideally in those types of circumstances, I would love to, but you often don't get the input of being like, hey, we know that, or we have the ability to give two subsets, like for when they're piping it into their in-car system, you play this set, or you can play this set when they're not, right? So we can optimize specifically, but most times that's not the case, unfortunately. Right. But that was an interesting one. And when you talk about app, or you have to consider, your phone is often in your pocket, right? So it's like, and again, going back to that kind of spectrum of design or framework of design, you got to think about like what really needs your attention in those moments.
Especially in that setting too, right? It can't be distractionary. And
So when I do that, I'm like, okay, this group of sounds, usually UI, touch-based stuff, is quiet, more muted. You don't need it. If you don't hear it, it's not the end of the world. And as you step up, it's like automotive again is like a perfect, I do this a lot with clients where it's like, the spectrum and scaling of alerts, like level 1, level 2, forward collision alerts versus
red alert,
a seatbelt warning, or a lot of companies are doing welcome sounds now when you first sit down, especially for EVs, to know the car is ready. Those can be very branded because they're kind of key moments for that first experience, but they shouldn't be loud. They shouldn't be super high pitched or in the high frequency range because that's going to really annoy people. Whereas when you get to this side of the spectrum with, those high level alerts, you kind of have to, increase the pitch and the volume and the intensity. So, I think about that for any type of product experience, like what is that spectrum? Ultimately?
Well, and it was interesting as we started because, I'm always fascinated by people's, how'd you get here kind of story. And, you obviously know you've had so much experiences in kind of like emergent technologies and the way we're starting to experience brands, even from EVs to products and things like that. But getting your start, talk a little bit about, you came out of music.
Yeah.
And like, it's sound.
Yeah.
But how do you find yourself drawing on those early moments from backgrounds? DJing? What else was in the bands?
I played in a bunch of bands in college and then DJing through college and into my time in San Francisco. And then went to a production school that was very like year-long, very specific, more about
Technical?
learning, the tools, right? During that time, I really connected to the branding community in San Francisco. And, what was it? Probably 2008, I'd say. And, huge tech boom happening at the time. And people were really interested in pulling sound in those experiences. So just kind of a lot of it was right place, right time, right talent, right?
And you also, you kind of like took some of the opportunities without maybe not necessarily knowing how to do them either. Right?
Yeah, I was pulled into conversations when I was in school and with like this company called Method in San Francisco, and they were like, "Hey, we're working with Samsung on this new product. Have you ever done product sound design?" And I was like,
yeah, I
"Oh
have."
yeah, totally, yeah, of course, yeah, I got it." And they're like, "Cool, put together a quote for us by in 2 days." And I went to the school I was at and talked to the head of the school, and I was like, "How much do you charge for this? Like, what am I
I was going
supposed
to
to
say,
do?"
did you blow it out of the water or did you underbid it?
Oh, God, I can't remember. The good thing is I had two brothers, or I have two brothers still, that are brand designers. So,
Okay.
I was able to, because the head of the school, he was like, first of all, how the hell did you get in that conversation? Second of all, he didn't really know because it was an emerging space. So he's like, he's working games and film, very different.
Right.
I think I came in kind of in the right spot, but that was my first kind of foray into it, and yeah, I mean, like you said, it's like you got to say yes. Like,
totally.
it opens doors, especially earlier in your career. You got to be like, absolutely.
Well, and I think even too, you like you said, the space was probably emerging, and there wasn't, like you said, right time, right place.
Yeah.
But also, like, gave you some freedom because you're like, probably not a lot of people doing this, and we're not going to potentially miss the mark. So
Yeah.
and I'm always fascinated too because, like, I think a few topics always come up here: DIY, how you got your start, and then skateboarding or music. And it's funny because so many creative people, whether they know it or not, are fueled particularly by sound. I think most designers I know run music and stuff. What's playing in your studio at any given time? I mean, it must be hard too because you're making stuff. Like,
it is. Honestly, it's kind of like I don't listen as much as actually I listen to the most music when I'm cooking dinner, right? Than when I'm working. It's like if I'm working on like strategy type stuff, I'll have music in the background. But right now, I mean, I'm all over the place. Like we talked about, I listen to a lot of hip hop on the drive over. I was listening to Kurt Vile. Like I love Kurt Vile's work. Gosh, what else? I mean, I listen to a lot of bluegrass.
Oh, no kidding.
It's just all over the map. I mean, it depends. Music is a mood setter or a mood supporter, right? It's like, where's your headspace? What do you want to listen to? At the end of the day, like literal end of the day, when I'm cooking dinner for my family, probably listening to jazz or like some very mellow kind of string bluegrass, no lyrics, John Reichman type stuff. That's just like more melodic and beautiful and flowy.
have you seen the Eno movie yet?
Oh, I haven't. I've heard
It's really interesting. And they're doing one where there's like, I don't know if it's AI, but it's reconstructing the soundtrack. Everyone who
cool.
listened to it hears it somewhat
Nice.
different. It's kind of interesting.
That's cool.
But it's funny you talk about the cooking dinner music thing because I've had a few discussions with designers, business founders, and it was very interesting because I said, "Oh, I gotta go. I'm getting off this call because I'm supposed to cook or something." And the person I was talking to on the phone was like, "Oh, you cook too?"
Yeah.
And we had this whole then I got super late. But we had this whole thing, and I came to this conclusion, and maybe you'll support me on this. Is like why we're busy, right?
Yeah.
Busy during the day, so the last thing you want to do is go cook.
Right.
But to me, there's an interesting thing, and the only conclusion I've come to, and I'm interested if you agree with this, we work on projects that take so long. That to me, dinner is a creative process that you're like beginning to end. Fuck, look at that. I saw it done in like a very short time frame. And to me, that's super rewarding, even though it might feel like to some people more work.
Right.
Agree or disagree?
I love cooking. Like to me, it's relaxing time.
Yeah.
It's like I get to play music. My kids are in the other room. Sometimes they'll come in and like try to help out.
And the only people that are going to
Which never
critique
works.
it are in your family.
Yeah.
So
Oh
you
God.
can-
Well, I have a 4-year-old daughter who kind of doesn't eat anything. So
oh, shoot.
yeah.
Do you feel like you won
when she eats?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
man. It's
victory.
like the biggest victory of the day. 100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really funny was when we talked, and I recently just went through a project working with an ad agency where I was kind of brought in as like a team member kind of deal, support. And the funniest thing is as we were going through concepts and stuff, a couple of the creatives wrote jingles.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh shit, people really do that. Because I'm such like a visual guy.
Yeah.
And I forget that ad people really write jingles and stuff. You mentioned some frustration with like traditional sound branding tropes, right? I mean, that might have been the word you used. Methods like jingles and stuff like that. Do you really hate jingles?
Yes. Personally, yeah, I do. But it's tough because like, look, this is a business that I work in, right? Jingles are very effective, they call
So
them
are they
earworms.
tested? Are they effective?
Oh yeah, they're extremely effective. And if you sing the name of the brand or have a tagline with it, it's gonna have much more ROI, right, for a brand. The challenge is what is that equity? What is that impression that you're leaving, right? Like, actually, I was thinking about it constantly because it's always advertised. The Burger King ads, like, it drives me nuts, right? Everyone here knows that, right? The Burger King ads. Any lovers? Any lovers? No, right?
Right.
It's very effective. People know it, but what's the impression it's leaving with the brand, right? It's like, so, and I look at jingles, and people in my industry are always, or not always, but the majority are going to say, well, they're very effective. People should be using them. And there's a huge resurgence in that space. Yeah. It kind of pulls away from, and look, it might be right for some brands, right? If you're marketing to young kids, right?
Yeah. But I mean, even like big fast food brands and stuff do it, and they occupy free space in your brain. Even though you don't like it, you just know who it is.
But there's an opportunity to me to, not just an opportunity, it should be number one or two within our jobs, is to be a trusted source of taste. And taste is subjective. So this is a murky territory we're getting into. But, someone who's been doing this work, not just me, anyone, for 15, 20 years, you would hope they have a wealth of not only experience, but also appreciation. Like I was saying, for music, right?
Right.
I listen to so many genres of music that I can pull from, and be like, and that's important, because that influences taste, right? That builds taste. And the more reps you get with that, you can really insert taste.
I think it also gives you as the maker different palettes to draw from, right?
Totally.
And then I think that's also another byproduct or a way to enter objectivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm not doing, I wouldn't be able to sell a client on the music I like, but but you have to take them to certain places. I talk to designers, visual designers, about creating vernaculars, right? If I say, give me something with a space age look, most people can go and find enough reference for that. And it is funny when you start to think about things like jingles. Is there anything that you do? Because our job is to show up as advisors to our clients, and sometimes we are considered like a service bureau in a way, right? Hey, you came to me for this service, I'm going to give it to you. But that doesn't mean we can't say, yeah, I hear what you're asking for, but here's something we might suggest.
Right.
What's your methodology for taking people down that path? Are you more of I gave you what you asked for, but I also want to show you what I think you should do? Or are you more of like, I heard what you asked for, or I heard what you were asking for, I don't agree with it, this is what you should do?
It's a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean, if a client has a very clear vision of what they want, I think it's a terrible idea, right? I'll say, okay, cool, let's do that. But let's also explore this territory. I think it'd be wise to do that. Let's go off and do that, And then, when I showcase design, I'm not shy at this point about being like, really giving recommendations. And they can take it or leave it, no, I don't take that personally. But I'm like, hey, here's, I think we should move away from the direction you guys really want to go. Here's why. Mm-hmm. But you got to back it up. You can't just be like, oh, because it's cooler.
But that's design.
Or whatever.
Like you have defense around
you
it,
have
right?
to. You have to put defense around it. Exactly. That's that strategy, that strategic rigor. Whatever it may. I'm trying to. What was it? It was actually. It's this automotive company I'm working with now, and we're doing the internal UX for the car. One of those moments is a welcome experience, right? They wanted to go really wide in exploration. And I'm like, okay, cool. And in terms of, melody and more song formy type thing, experiences, or more textural, right? And part of that research was like, hey guys, I've worked with all these companies, but also we went beyond that. Where's the industry moving, right? Not only that, but why? Why are they moving that way? And we pushed away from, hyper melodic structures. We pushed more to textural because most people probably don't want to sound at all for when they get in their car, right?
Yeah.
And if they do, they want something supportive, hold back, that just kind of, softly brings them in, right? Having a very melodic,
triumphant,
yeah,
like,
it's just
welcome.
like, it's too much brand, when in fact, they've already bought your brand, right? So what are you really doing? They bought your car, they bought your brand. You don't need to push brand so hard on them. Let's create something more subdued, more supportive, more textural. That's just like a nice, like, hey, your car's here, you're ready to go. It's on, your EV's on, right?
It's interesting too to think about, like, you know, as more EVs come online, we're going to start at some point. I pray we will have entry-level vehicles that are affordable to most human beings, and then you
Yeah.
move your way up. But even the sounds, I would bet, you know, like that's one thing I'm often asked. Hey, we want this to feel like an elegant brand or an up-leveled brand, whatever that is, or this is a very working class brand. I've been given those, you know,
Sure.
parameters before, and it is interesting to think about that. How that might, again, it's subjective until you defend it, but
Yeah.
like an orchestral movement might feel a little bit more upscale, right?
Sure.
That's probably stereotypical, but whereas if you know you got into a you got into a lower priced car, and is it just like you know, it's the primary colors of sound
Yeah.
in some way. You touched on something interesting in this notion of coming up with, you know, there's the subtlety or the art of steering people towards the right idea. And you mentioned the notion of we are tastemakers, right? Like we're constantly building our repertoire of what we know so we can put it back out there in the world in some regurgitated kind of way, right? Like,
Yeah.
and all music has been done before, from what I understand. It's just recombined in some way. You mentioned this interesting thing about like presenting, you know, it is an art form. Hey, client, I hear what you're asking for. Is there any example where you've moved out of that safe option world where you're like, I'm going to take this risk because I don't really care, or I know I'm so confident in the fact that this is the right thing?
Oh, yeah.
And like how to play out?
Yeah,
And was it
actually,
crash and burn? It can be that story too.
No, there's definitely been times where, you know, I wouldn't say it's not necessarily about pushing the envelope into like really potentially controversial, but like, you know, that automotive example that I was just giving, like I really pushed them in this textural direction and got their buy-in quite quickly. So there's a lot of experiences like that, you know, throughout my career where it's like, hey, you know, these are the reasons why we want to move this direction. And generally they're pretty on board with it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's super, you know, having that collaborative process between clients is so important, right?
Well,
Because
and then so much of your work is collaborative in a way. I know that
yeah.
if you go to your site, there's a picture of you alone in front of a soundboard, where I'm sure that experience does happen. But like all design, especially UX and things like that, which are very system-driven elements, have some level of collaboration or participation in it. And I think it's interesting because most people, maybe it's more, I've always looked at my clients as the collaborator. I refer to myself as like a catalytic designer because I need their inputs. I work in a lot of like software and shit like that. But it's interesting because, like, you know, when we talked about how your business runs, there are projects where it's you,
Yeah.
and then there are projects where it's a team, right?
Yep.
How do you kind of like, what are you looking for when you're collaborating with people? Are there signals like, oh shoot, like I might not work well with this person, or I love these kinds of.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, generally, like, I haven't had a bad working experience with really anyone, to be totally honest. It's more about, like, what does the project call for? Like, you know, these fields of, like, UX versus sound logos versus music are very, very different talent sets.
Yep.
You could have the best film composer in the world, give him a UX project, and 95% of the time, it's going to be way too complex, right? Way too layered. UX should be simple for the most part, simplified, much more clear, you know? So you know, when I'm building teams, it's really just very specific to the project. What does it need? You know, where do I see this going creatively? And who's the right person to fit that, you know? And like, I have a huge bench and they're all very unique, you know, they all kind of have their own styles, and of course they can stretch and they can do different things. But you know, it's very specific to that, you know, well, what are the deliverables? What is the style, the aesthetic the client I think will want to go, and then pulling in for that. But you're right. I mean, right now I'm carrying three 3 different brands, and one of them has like 3 projects wrapped inside of it, and I'm doing 100% of it.
Oh,
you know.
geez.
But the cool thing is, I mean, there's, as you know, there's always peaks and valleys of workflow, and it works out. But I build teams based on the project needs, but also how much is coming in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, and that's the joy of being more like an independent as you can scale. And you touched on something very important that I think is so truthful for all design. But even when you talk about 3 projects wrapped into one project, that's a very common phenomenon because most brands are organisms, right? Like they're constantly moving and changing. And I don't know what your clients are like, but mine will call me, and not only are we continuing to work on the thing that had already the crazy deadline, something else will be introduced into that, and you just you manage it. Mm-hmm. I think we touched on this, but like you made the notion of like, hey, I'm trying to get the difference between a composer making a sound logo or something is they probably do too much, right? Mm-hmm. I do think the tendency for design is to want to simplify everything, but like sometimes something is inherently complex can't be simplified. But I think you touched on it, clarity.
Clarity.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, you don't want to muddy up the interactions. I mean, these are functional moments, right? Of course, brand and personality is important, but like top list priority item for UX is functionality and clarity. Like you got to check that box first. So what I see with most designers who don't have experience in UX is just kind of overcomplicating things to make it sound cool, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, we want it to sound differentiated, distinct, cool, whatever. But, you've lost that clarity.
I do think that. Do you think that it's like my guilty pleasure is cooking shows, and it's like the thing they always grind on people in the end of those is like you added one thing too many. And I do think that is like whether it's. I see it more in like less experienced designers that there's just this tendency that like the confidence in having less on the page, less in the sound is terrifying to some people. They won't think I worked on it hard enough.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've reached that point where you're like, no, I have the right, I'm comfortable in giving them the right amount of notes, or you're like, fuck, I think they want a salad right now. They need more.
I mean, I still struggle with that. It's working with this ag tech company just the other day before a presentation, and I was like, man, are these all just way too stripped back? Like is the distinction there, and I did some minor edits to things, but at the end of the day, I was like, no, this is actually pretty good. And the presentation went great, and
You touch on something though that I think is super critical. And I always call that and I'm going to use myself as the reference. There are a few signs, and I do not think of myself as a very mature person, but I've realized that I do have some creative maturity moments where whether it's screwing things up so many times or whatever it is. But I think when you get to the point where you start to ask yourself the questions of why am I doing what I'm doing? Is this good? Am I really being theoretical about like, am I checking these boxes? Mm-hmm. And like almost like using yourself as the argument, right? To justify, is this right? That is I think a total sign of it. And I think if I look at my younger career, I was still arguing with myself, but there was never an answer. It was just a constant back and forth versus now where I get to this thing where I do a little bit of the internal argument to arrive at, yes, it's right. You got to have that that confidence as you move into it.
Yeah, you do. And I think I used to always try to get it right in the first round, and it's like, no, round 1 is about exploration.
It's dating, if you ask me. It's like you're still exploring it.
Yeah, and by round 3 or 4, you should be pretty dialed, and that's when you really have those conversations at a deep level. But round 1, and that's going back to the experience I was talking about just a second ago. It was for round 1 design, and I was like, we're good. Like these are not perfect, but they shouldn't be.
Well, and I think too that's we live in such a high fidelity state. Like people see an image and they think that's done, right? And I did work in a period where there was literally people doing sketches of things, like hand-drawn poster sketches. And there was a fascinating phenomenon. I remember when mock-ups started moving towards looking like a finished object, that the perception of exploration and potential changed. It was really interesting because, I think we both work in that world of, you do a lot of like level setting when you present your work, especially in the initial rounds, right?
Big time. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very important thing to prepare your audience for, hey, we're still we haven't figured it out. It took me reading an article actually by Michael Beirut, designer at Pentagram, that he said that, we went to this meeting basically not having it all figured out. And he was very comfortable in presenting in that way. And it invited the client in, and I was like, son of a bitch, you're allowed to do that? And so anyway, so I needed to read it. Though that was the funny thing for me is like, I don't really think I'd ask for permission very much.
Yeah, you got to level set. I mean, I was talking to a colleague last night who runs a audio post and music house in the Midwest. And they're really interested in getting into audio branding as well. And they've done a little bit here and there. Really, really talented group. And he was, just really grilling me about like, how do you do this? What's the process? How do you get buy-in? How do you move the process along smoothly? And I was just talking to him about these frameworks and that upfront strategy, and in level setting with clients, like before meeting, like reminders, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's the strategy we put together that we've all agreed upon. And that's the lens we're looking through, when we're critiquing the work.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think, again, that's removing as much as you can. You're kind of setting yourself up to remove subjectivity. Hey, I'm presenting it to you in these ways with these requirements. Totally. And I think that's a smart setup. All right. Yeah. Mixing it up a little bit. So these are kind of going to be a few choose them kind of scenarios. All right. And they're just fun. So, no right answers, no wrong answers. Maybe bad answers. There might be bad answers. Music theory or gut instinct?
Gut instinct.
Sound logo or ambient soundscape?
Ambient soundscape.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm personal preferences here. Yeah. Ambient soundscape.
And if you had to work on one?
Ambient soundscape.
Yeah, that was what you would want to.
Yeah.
Improvisation or structure?
Improv. Yeah.
Minimalism or maximalism? I think I know this.
Minimalism.
Yeah, I was going to say so. Add one sound or remove one sound?
Remove.
Has to be, right? That's the cooking show thing.
That's half of my process initially is clients will come with like 30 things they want to create. And I'm like, you really need
Do you
10.
get a mood board? Like, will they give you samples of like, we love these sounds?
They'll give me samples or just have an asset list, like, hey, we want to create 60 sounds across this car experience. And I'm like, that's way too much.
Yeah.
You're going to confuse people and they won't, be able to really understand that.
Is there an example in the sound world of, most people in visual brand and things like that, someone will usually go, they'll show you a bunch of Apple examples of what they want their stuff to feel like.
Yeah.
What's the sound equivalent? What gets used as a frequent? Is there one?
I mean, in the sound logo world, everyone comes and says, we want the Netflix to dumb.
That's what I was going to say.
They always do that.
It's a dumb.
Everyone wants that. And the funny thing is, I actually had a client hit me up yesterday about wanting their version of that. And the funny thing is, like, the reason that's so successful, it is very unique sound, right? But it doesn't follow the recipe for ROI or success, like the jingle or the tagline or the brand name that traditional advertising generally follows. The reason it's so successful is because it's used every time people watch Netflix. And guess what? Everyone watches Netflix. That's why it's so successful.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when I work with clients on sound logos and stuff, a lot of times we'll get through creative and they'll use it for 2 months and be like, it's not working. And it's like, well, you gotta run it. You gotta run it for a long time to build equity.
Well, and that's a behavioral thing, right? Like
Totally.
I've had this discussion with clients about logos, and we get into a discussion of, could it be more like this? Could we see these kinds of things? And you're like, honestly, USA Today is a perfect example. It's a blue dot.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be the planet. But the reason it's successful, it's not because it's overly simplified or whatever. They just kept using the same thing forever. And no one even argues. And now if you change it, people would probably lose their minds.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's frequency. It is how many times it gets.
That is a massive piece of the puzzle.
And ironic, that word means many things in your world too.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you dislike them, but do you have a favorite jingle?
I mean,
do you have a hated jingle? The most hated?
the Burger King thing.
Oh, the
is
Burger
just
King one.
awful.
Okay, yeah.
Just drives me nuts.
So we started with hatred. Now let's go to what we like. Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying not to.
It can be your own
I could
work.
say State Farm, but like I worked on that.
Yeah.
But But that is like, that was created in the 1960s by Barry Manilow. The melody. So I didn't create the melody. What happened with that is they wanted to modernize the instrumentation, right? Make it more timeless.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I don't think it's too bad. And the way that we did the strategy with that too, I think is unique, is kind of opening up an advertisement with the initial, 5 notes, and then closing with the 9 notes. So bookends, right? So I think that's smart. Honestly,
but from a system standpoint, that's a pretty rad, bumper.
Totally.
Idea.
Yeah. I mean, it was I think one of the first that really did the bookend thing, and now you're seeing more of that.
Yeah.
But in terms of other jingles, I got nothing.
Okay, that's fine. Live performance or studio production?
For me,
Yeah.
studio. I played live forever. I'm not a live person, mainly because when I played, especially in San Francisco, I was playing keyboard that I would run through my laptop. Had a very complex setup, and then I had guitar and guitar pedals, and the setup was just gnarly, and also the room for disaster for something crashing. It was just anxiety. I love
couldn't enjoy it.
When I was in college and I was just playing guitar, that was fun. It was more improv based. That I would choose live music, but when it's really structured live music, there's too much room for kind of disaster.
Yeah. And I do think that's a design tendency too. We don't want we like to have control.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
I think I know the answer to this one, but acoustic or electronic?
Oh, I'd say both. I mean, more lately, as I mentioned to you when we spoke, I've gotten back to playing my acoustic guitar a lot. And I just love the organic nature of it, and just hearing the wood in a room. But I mean, in the past, it would definitely have been more electronic, but now I'd just say both. Yeah.
I think it's good. I think a yes answer is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So when we met the last time we were talking, you hinted at man, I wish the industry was doing a couple things different, maybe even hinting at looking kind of beyond the future of what branding for ads might be, even talking about these things like bookends. These are new traditions and things that are coming out. So what might be next for you? What are some innovations or things that you're seeing in sound design that you're that's exciting to me? I love the idea of that, where it could go.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, more immersive sound, Dolby Atmos is becoming a part of products, which is pretty cool. I mean, that opens up the world for audio in a big way. So as
quality-wise too.
Quality-wise, as far as just immersion, that's huge. And I think everything's going to be moving in that direction over time. I'm really interested to see where things like the emerging technology space, I know it's pretty broad, but XR experiences, how are we using audio in those types of environments?
Yep.
And I mean, automotive, I've been working in so much in that space. There's still a ton of innovation happening there, and autonomous driving is really cool because you got to drive 5 hours and your car's driving you. That's
you can only watch
opportunity.
so much Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, but there's options. You watch Netflix, you could listen to your music, you could play a game, or I have done some work where there's these generative soundscapes with generative visuals for in-car experiences. That's pretty cool. I mean,
that's
would
really
people
cool.
use them that much? I don't know. At this stage, some of them were very cool visually and immersive. Some of them were kind of like screensavers.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it?
So, I mean, you got to make them really, really engaging for it to take off, but that could be really exciting.
AI is so prevalent in the visual design world at the moment. What's it going to do in sound? I know so many of my friends are voiceovers and stuff are starting to happen through, AI actors and things like that. What's the impact to you? And beneficial, right, too? It's not all shit, the industry's over, but...
For sure, yeah. The Sunos of the world, they nail... Currently, I haven't used it in quite a few months, actually, but back when I was testing it, it would nail pop country because pop country is so overproduced.
I was going to say, that's probably pretty easy for it to do, too.
But if you get into these other genres that are a bit more complex and nuanced, it can't really do it yet. but it'll get there, you know, and that's
Give it a command like Swedish black metal or something and see what
good
it
luck.
does.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You know, it'll get there though, and it's crazy. And in the world of UX, I don't know what's happening on that front yet. I should probably have more knowledge around this. I could see that being huge. But the thing to me is like, of course, it's scary. You know, it's like, okay, what does that mean? AI is always going to need a creative director,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Someone who can be the tastemaker. And where AI is with sound right now, it doesn't iterate well. You know,
I feel the same with audio, with visuals.
Yeah, you can be like, okay, cool. That first example you just did, that's cool, but it missed the mark here, here, and here. Can you improve upon these things? And it just kind of stops.
Or it'll
doesn't.
go, yeah, like, or you're like, go back 3, because that one was the closest one,
Yeah.
and you're like, are you not listening anymore?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel you on
It's
that.
crazy though, man. It'll be wild to see where we end up in
Yeah.
the next 5 years. Yeah.
I know you're going to be at the forefront of it. Thank you so much
Yeah, man.
for being here. This
Yeah,
was great.
It's awesome.
Thank you, Connor.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, y'all.
Great.
It's good times.